Hey everybody, it's Jon Meyers from Right Better Together. Look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
We're interrupting the internet, the entire internet, to tell them about something big.
So we're going to have a new webinar in January of 2025 on January 16th, which is going to be the third Thursday at 5 Pacific, 7 Central, and 8 Eastern. And we're going to be talking about perfectionism.
We've spoken to so many people in our audience and in person and online that struggle with having to have it perfect before they show it to anybody, before they send it off to query, before they do anything with it. And poppycock nonsense is what I say. What do you say, Emily?
Yeah, and it shouldn't stop us from feeling like we are writers too. We can say, I'm a writer, even if you don't feel like your work is perfect.
And so we're going to work through that on the webinar with your help, because you're going to be there, just like on our last one we did. Your shining bright faces will be there asking us questions, and we'll work through the discussion.
Yes. So if you want to join us, you can go to writebettertogether.com/contact and fill out the form and just put January webinar, and we will add you to the list. We will send you a link on the day of. We'll also be live streaming on Facebook and YouTube.
Great. I'll be there.
Me too. We hope to see you all there.
Welcome everybody to Right Better Together. I'm Jon Meyers. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Is that your New Year song? It's January 7th. It's January 7th. It looks like
there's not really a New Year's song except Old Lang Syne.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of a sad song.
Well, write one. You're a songwriter.
Actually, I used to write a lot of songs as a kid.
There you go. Misty's watching. Misty, write a New Year's song.
Yeah, let's do it. Because, I mean, Old Lang Syne is great. It's cozy, or not cozy, but it's like nostalgic. But it's kind of sad.
It is sad.
Anyway.
How'd your New Year's go, Emily? Oh wait, well, first, what are we talking about today?
Well, so we're going to be sharing a live webinar that we did on story.
Oh my goodness.
We talk about things like what is story, how can you make them better, and we talked about plotting and structure, character, all kinds of stuff.
Real live humans showed up for it.
Yeah.
What else is happening on this quite the list?
Oh, we're gonna have listener response. We're gonna have Hey Jon Meyers segment where I teach Jon Meyers something.
Is it gonna hurt my brain?
I don't know. We're gonna have the final act.
Oh.
And I just remembered, did we give a call to action at the end of the webinar?
Yeah, you did. You're like,
oh, good for
hey,
me.
here's a bonus. Here's a bonus call to action.
That's right. I remember now. I remember what it was now. Awesome.
So that's the call to action.
I'm waiting for those. I'm excited to get those from the people who were in the webinar. But now you too can do the call to action.
Yeah. How'd you get out of your bubble? Wait, it's January 7th. Are you still pregnant? Is there still a baby? Did it come out already?
I know the gender and everything now.
It takes 1 week for a baby to happen, according to this book. It's been like months.
So that's actually what I was going to talk about.
Oh my goodness.
About getting out of my bubble, because there are so many pregnant people in what?
When the baby finally does come in May, you're gonna be like, baby Brooks, you just got out of your bubble. Literally. This poor child.
Quite literally. Yeah. So there are so many pregnant people in my church right now.
Oh my goodness. Don't go to that church if you don't want to get pregnant.
But what's funny, well, anyway, what's funny is when I first started going to this church, everybody was having girls Like
Yeah.
there were
Okay.
so many people that were having girls, and then it swapped, and now everybody's having boys. So I don't know what that means. But I went to a baby shower for two of these women. It was a combined baby shower because their due dates are so like similar. They're like in a well, actually, at the time, one was like about to have her baby, and the other one was due in December, at the end of December. But it just made me really excited to know, like, I had this thought that, like, these are going to be my kids' friends.
Oh, that's so cool. That's
Right?
true, though.
Like, I mean, Lord willing, we all, if we stay in the same church, if we don't move away, if everybody's healthy, like, but if all those things happen, like, all these babies that are being born in the church, they're going to be my kids' friends growing up.
You put those parents need to be put on notice now that your kids are going to be my friends. So you want the parents in that parent group to be whatever, on their best behavior. I don't know
Yeah.
what in your tribe.
Well, so like I went to the same church for most of my life, and one of my best friends, it like we knew each other when we were babies. Like is still my one of my best friends. So actually, we weren't really that like close until college, but
That's
so you never know.
so we have lots of pregnant women at our church too. There are elementary age K through 5. There's 500. I don't know
Oh
the
my
exact numbers
word!
of students, and it just gets added. There's 22 classrooms for those ages, and they're all full. And so we have to build.
Oh
We
my
just built a
goodness.
bigger facility, and we have to build more, which is great. That's what you want, and so it's happening all over.
Yeah, my pastor loves it. He gets really excited whenever babies make noise in the sanctuary.
We had someone at Southern Festival of Books all those months ago, come by our like your other viewers of this show are pregnant, and
Yeah.
you're pregnant, so be careful when you're watching our show because something's happening there too. It's not just these two churches. There's something there's something about watching
I
our
think
show.
maybe that's just part of being human, Jon
Oh,
Myers.
and I'm not pregnant, so that it's not working for me. Whatever it is, right?
So, what about you? How'd you get out of your bubble?
I got a haircut. Look, see how
Oh,
beautiful it is? Don't
nice.
I look great? And so I go to the same place. We've actually talked about me getting a haircut before, and so I went back to the normal place that I normally go, and the routine place. And so I just discovered it 3 years ago. I love that between the two of us, I'm the one with hair fashion tips. No, not fashion tips, but hair discussions. And but but so I now, since I found this place, I go once a month. So I normally go first week in the month. This is January 7th, so I must have gone this first the first week of this month. And uh, and so in 3 years, so that's 36 haircuts from the same place, right? Every one of them have been like more than great, like super just wonderful. It's all women at this one. I think I talked about that there were women in one and men in the other barber college, and everyone's been great, like super gentle, just wonderful, wants to make sure the customer gets what they want. It's been lovely. This woman, she was so rough on my head, like pushing my head around, and like I
Oh
felt like I've
no.
been through the obstacle course by the time I was done, and like pushing my head this way and this way, and
Oh
like and
no.
um and you know how they're like, you're in the chair and spinning the chair too fast and crashing her body into my arm, and just like I felt like I was getting beat up after I got my haircut done. It looks great.
Yeah.
It's it might even look. I don't want to say that. I would say it might have looked better than some of the other ones I've had. I don't remember because who knows, a year ago, if 36 haircuts in a row, who knows if I can't grade them all and in my memory, but it looks either the same or better than the best of them, right?
Yeah.
So I still tipped her because I felt like she needed encouragement. She had no bedside manner or whatever. She's like, move your head, put your chin down, look up at the lights, and like, and uh, and normally if you went to a place that was always like that, that would be the norm. But this place is so gentle and wonderful to their customers. it was culture shock or something. And then but I still tipped her, so she still got a nice tip because I thought normally you tip someone because they did such a great job and you're encouraging them because they're students. This one I tipped because I wanted to get her out of her funk or whatever she was like going through, and so when I slid the tip across, so you pay the other one, cashier woman, and you slide the tip across to the hair cutter woman, and she really did smile and she melted. She's like, oh, I'm like, here, this is for you. And she went, oh, and she had a big smile, which she didn't have. And it doesn't take that long to cut my hair, but for the 15 minutes to cut my hair, she did not. The message is money can melt someone. No, but she really her whole countenance changed once she got the tip, and so say something about that. It was wild.
It's interesting your tip philosophy because I thought that tips were just expected now, like it was just part
What?
of the charge.
Yeah, I wouldn't withhold one if it. Well, I didn't,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, I don't. That's interesting. But I think that's neat that maybe she was having a bad, like maybe she was having a bad day and didn't expect gratitude, and then you gave her the gratitude, and that made her day.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's spot on what happened. But I didn't. It surprised me. I didn't do that so that it would happen. It wasn't predictable. And at this place, like everyone is super. Like people don't tip at this place. So it is an exception, and so if
Yeah,
you think
that
it's just
probably.
if you think it's just expected, this place it's not.
Yeah,
There are people already going there because it's so cheap or whatever, and I'm just going there because you don't need an appointment and it's right next to the grocery store.
yeah. I have
And
a
it's
feeling
wonderful.
that sounds like kind of like when you're in the restaurant industry, like you expect people to be rude or you expect people to be ungrateful, and so it's surprising. I think sometimes when that happens. So yeah,
There you go.
I
You,
hope that I
you
hope
go
she's
ahead.
encouraged.
Me too. And she'll never hear this because I didn't tell her about the podcast because she was so brutal to my poor little head.
We have listener response.
We do. So last year, back in 2024, when we were but young children, we had an episode called "I'm a Writer, but ... What's stopping you?" Thank God it had an ellipses and not a colon after it. Finally, we didn't have to discuss our colon on this show. And
Well, you just
and
brought it up.
oh man, the ever-present colon. Um, there's there's 3 of them on this episode now. There's not just 2 colons. Poor baby Brooks. All right, so I'm really enjoying this. So we have a response. We have many responses, but from Emily Tucker Rhinelander, another Emily. For too many years, I added writer at the end of a sentence like a period. Ooh, as if I was embarrassed to say it, when in my soul it was who I was first. Now I say it first when people ask me what I do. I make myself announce it, so I am a writer who has come out of the closet into the sunshine. It is both freeing and terrifying. What do you think about that?
I love it. I love it because we talked about in that episode the people that we met at the Southern Festival of Books who we would ask them, "Are do you write?" And they would be kind of like, "Well," And so I love that she's like, yes, I'm a writer.
300 people that went, well, um, yeah, so great. And I like what she said, that she puts it up front and said, it's freeing, and but then she said, and terrifying.
I think it's terrifying because I understand that it shouldn't be terrifying, but I understand that it puts pressure on it. Because if you say to people, I'm a writer, then it's like, oh, when are you going to get published? Or have you been published? Or when are you going to be successful, quote unquote? Like what? And to me, that can be intimidating of like, okay, now I've set myself up for failure. And it shouldn't be like that, but I understand that
No,
mindset.
there's people that say, hey, I'm a screenwriter. Oh, what have I seen? Well,
Yes.
there were 80,000 scripts registered with the WGA last year, and 11 were made.
Right.
I was one of these 79,988. And that doesn't mean you're not a screenwriter because you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And then the last 10 things you watched on Netflix, who was the screenwriter? Exactly. People don't even know, like, so you don't even know. Screenwriters know 3 of them, maybe, right? And but a regular civilian, normal consumer of media, they don't know who wrote what.
Right.
They don't know that the same woman wrote this, who wrote that. They just don't. They don't know.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's true. So you are a writer regardless of the outcome.
If you write, you're a writer.
Yeah. Love it. Here is our webinar.
All right. Well, I think John and Emily are almost ready. So let's count down. 3, 2, 1. Emily, John, y'all ready to join us? Emily Brooks.
Indeed. Hello.
Welcome, everybody. Who's this guy? Who's the guy in the red flannel?
Yeah, y'all didn't
everybody
expect
to write
that.
better. Yeah, where'd he come from? He's the man behind the curtain, except he's in front of a curtain. Welcome, everybody, to Write Better Together, our first live webinar. I'm Jon Meyers. Look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Well, hello, Jon Meyers.
Tell people who David is.
So this is David Corbly, who I've recently met in Oklahoma City at WriterCon and got to know him a bit. And so he's helping us. I learned that he knows tech. So
he's the only reason us. He's the only reason you can actually see us right now.
No, not at all. I think Emily is the brains behind all the tech.
But he will help you if you have any trouble.
Also, I talked to a couple of people today, and they weren't even aware that this is like the full Hot Fudge Sundae. This isn't just some bowl of ice cream where they can chat off to the side. They can join us on screen, put their beautiful little faces on there, put their beautiful little voices on there, or big voices, and actually be on screen with us using that link. And then if they do that, then they have to turn on their camera or their microphone, and then Emily, do you have to admit them?
Yeah, I'll admit them. I'll get like a little ping. And so if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube and you want to join us in the chat, I shared a link in the comments that you can follow.
And there's a button at the bottom that says join live call.
Yes. Once you get in here into the Riverside software, then there'll be a button.
There you go.
There you go.
David, can you, or we both can, let's say hi to everybody. So we said hi to Sierra. We see there's an Emily in Ocean Springs, Mississippi.
Yes. Welcome.
I heard David ask, is that north or south?
I would assume south.
It's on the ocean.
You never know.
Hey, there's no ocean in Mississippi. There's a Gulf. That's fake news right there. That's not a why is your town named that? All right. And David's also going to monitor any questions, and then we're going to stop and pause during periods for questions. Yes. Anything else you want to say before we start Emily Brooks?
Just that I think we made this clear, but we are recording this, and so if you do join us, just know that you'll be recorded and your questions will be recorded. That's all.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, because we know your time is valuable, and time is your most valuable resource, most valuable asset, and you could be doing anything with it right now. You could be watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or whatever you watch on the TV, and you took your time out of your day.
Yay, Sierra.
Oh my gosh, there's another person. Hi, Sierra.
Hi. So glad you're here.
Thank you. Nice to meet you again.
Yes.
I heard about this at the Festival of Books.
Yes. Oh. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to make it.
Thanks.
Anyone else that's out there, join just like Sierra. Sierra, you're our model. You're modeling for them proper webinar guest behavior. All right, ready to start?
Ready.
All right, so thank you for joining us for the millionth time that I've said that. Today's webinar, we're going to talk about the next one at the end, but today's webinar is What is Story? And before we start, I want to ask our giant audience, Sierra, Emily in Ocean Springs, what do you think story is? Oh, the pressure's on. What if you get it wrong?
I guess it's something we tell people to entertain or share information. I don't really know.
And Emily in chat.
Not untrue.
Do you have something to add to that? And while you're typing in chat, if you're not going to join us with your face, I will tell you, Sierra, you are not alone. I asked this question in a screenwriting group. 273 people responded. 3 of them got it right. And these are all screenwriters at different levels. They said all kinds of answers. Lots of them were like, this long, full of words that didn't mean anything. It's the narrative of a journey through a mountain stream and la da da la di da di da. And here's some of the popular wrong answers where more than one person said it. It's a narrative with a beginning and a middle of an end. Emily Brooks, do you know what I'm going to say about that?
You're going to say wrong.
Wrong. The sandwich I had for dinner has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it when I ate it. Is that a story? No.
No.
What happens when I go out to the mailbox and get some mail out of the mailbox, Emily?
Well, you've proven that sometimes that can be a story, but sometimes no.
Now, a story can happen on the way to the mailbox.
A story can happen, yes.
or on the way back. But going to the mailbox and getting mail out is not a story.
Well, and I'll say, too, because I have, if I can just interject here, I've had students where I've asked them, like, write about, like, an experience that you've had. And they'll tell, like, a story about their vacation. And vacations are great. We all enjoy them, and I think we love writing about them. But often there's not really a story. It's things happen. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. Lots of stuff happens, but it's not a story.
That you knew what I was going to say. That's my next point. So, a bunch of stuff happening, that's not a story. I get in the car in Chicago and I drive to Los Angeles and I stop 4 times in between. That's not a story, but a bunch of stuff happened. And I might even have met interesting people, but it's still not a story.
And you may write interesting descriptions and have great metaphors and beautiful prose, but is it a story?
The third most popular answer was, it's a journey, and because they have read like Hero's Journey or something, right? And but the journey itself, even that's not a story. It might have a beginning and a middle and an end, but if it's without conflict, it wouldn't be a story. So a story for everyone watching is you have a protagonist or a main character who has goals, and there's obstacles. That's it. It's simple, it's easy, but it's not simple nor easy. It's a protagonist, a goal, and some obstacles. And that's what a story is. And that's why, here, go ahead. You want to add to that, Emily, before I...
No, keep going.
All right. So that's why so I just watched. I have one fresh in mind. I'm not going to name it in case that. Well, we can see the person who wrote it is not in here, but in case the person that wrote it happens to jump in here, I saw a film on TV, and for the first 13 minutes. Literally nothing happened. It was exposition theater, and it was, hey, remember when we were remember that time when we were 8 years old and I was your sister? It was literally like that. And so people know, and this will start bleeding into the second section of what's a compelling story. Every person has a cultural inventory, and the cultural inventory is every story, every song, every film, every movie, every commercial, every piece of advertising on the shopping cart for the real estate lady that's on there that you've consumed since the minute you were born. And no two people's cultural inventories are the same. Those cultural inventories, that's a term from Henry Jenkins, not from me, have become absorbed into our being, into our, not technically our DNA, but into our DNA. And so we know, like, even if you're not a trained screenwriter or a trained novelist, you still know, and you turn the channel and you don't keep watching that movie because nothing has happened in the first 13 minutes. And I timed it with a stopwatch. It was 13 minutes, and then the story started, and it was an okay story once it started. And I won't comment on it anymore. And but nothing happened from minute 0 to minute 13, and that's because, and anyone would have known that. Your mom would have known that. Your next door neighbor would have known that. Your mailman would have known that, because they've just consumed so much media, something feels off.
That's all really, really good. Yeah. Keep going.
All right. There are ways to make your story compelling. The first one I just intimated at. It has to start. Like, it has to start before your mind wanders. I was in a webinar with this guy who was pitching to a production company that that works with Netflix, and they told the people that were in that meeting that you have to have two things going on immediately, because people now watch Netflix with a phone in their hand, so they're not watching two screens. And so unless two things are happening to get you engaged to the story, you're going to start looking at your phone. And so it used to be you had to get their attention in the first 10 minutes. Now you have to get their attention immediately. And so you want your story to start immediately. But Emily, you have experience from that with your novel that you worked on.
Yeah, you want it to start immediately, but I think what you are thinking about is, like, there is a point where your characters, a shift happens in their world, but you can't really show that there's a shift happening in their world, like that's real start, like, okay, the story started now, until you've also introduced the characters. I just think that sometimes that introduction happens, it takes too long, or they've neglected to show that, or they've neglected including conflict within that introduction, that you can actually have conflict and obstacles and tension even before the story technically starts, even before their world shifts. And, technically we would say, like, oh, the story's really started and it's been like 5 to 10 minutes. Well, what's happening before that is introducing us to their world, but there can still be something going on. There can be conflict between characters. There can be even simple obstacles, things the character needs or wants, that shows just even their daily, like, I'm really hungry and I'm late in traffic. Like, it can be something as simple as that.
And you can also, 100%. That's 100% correct. You can also put in a good portion of those details, Now, Emily writes fantasy, so there does have to be some world building and that happening. But there still has to be something conflict. It can't be all world building for the first 10 chapters either.
Yeah.
And but so that example that I gave of, hey, remember that time when you were my sister? You can tell through action in the first 3 minutes of a film or in a screenplay that these two women have a close bond. The fact that they're sisters might not come into play until 15 minutes or 20 minutes into it, or even a half hour. And then the fact that you didn't know that at the beginning, it makes the bond that you already recognize through their actions, it makes it stronger, because you're like, well, no wonder they bond so well. They were sisters. And I'm not talking about keeping it a mystery till the end. I'm just saying revealing details doesn't have to happen all up front, like in the example I gave.
Right. And if you're trying to draw your readers in, you can kind of foreshadow what the main conflict is going to be, even in those first few pages, right? Even if you haven't gotten to that turning point yet, there's just the details that you choose hint at who these characters are and what they're going to be struggling with throughout the rest of the story. Or if it's a short story, the first few paragraphs or sentences.
Yeah, proportionately, if it's a shorter work, then the stuff happens sooner.
And I will say, because you mentioned fantasy, there's a little bit of a difference that I'll mention. Sometimes with fantasy, you can get really bogged down in all of the details early on. So an alternative that some people do is you put them right into the action in the beginning to show them this is the kind of story you're reading, and then you step back and kind of slow down and show them the rest of the world.
In screenwriting, you can even do that depending on the tone of the action. Even before the first character speaks, if there's a little winky joke in your action, like not a straight out joke like with a punchline, but if there's a cheekiness to your action, you're gonna know that a comedy's coming and not a horror, or a rom-com's coming. If it's dark and foreboding on the first sentence, even before anyone speaks, you're gonna know that it's a horror or some kind of drama.
Yeah.
And that just comes from the writing.
Yeah.
The other thing that you can do to make and I'm big on this one, to make the story engaging past the actual action that's starting is so it's protagonist, goal, obstacles. You can make that protagonist the least likely person to go on the journey, the least likely person to succeed. If it's Goliath and Goliath, who cares? You're not going to watch that. But that is like a basic analogy that I shouldn't have even used, because that story is actually more complex than most people think. But it's you know what we're talking about. If it's give a fairy tale example, Emily.
So I think The Hobbit is the perfect example.
Yeah, there you go.
And The Lord of the Rings, because The Hobbit's, I think the best one is you've got just this kind of grumpy, introverted hobbit who doesn't have any adventuring experience, who's called onto this adventure. Gandalf isn't the main character. Even though Gandalf joins, it's still Bilbo who has to take on the main obstacles in the story. It's his story, not Gandalf's, or not the other. Hi, Bethany.
Hey, look, everybody, it's Bethany Hale.
Not the other dwarves, right? And it's not dragon versus dragon. It's not Godzilla versus King Kong.
Correct.
Bethany, I saw your question, and that's a great question that we can get to later. She asked if poetry can be a story.
Oh, that is a great question. So I'm writing because Godzilla has something to do with what I can say later. So I'm writing that down. And I see Lori Twichell has joined us. Lori, if you didn't know, you can join us with your face and your voice if you would like. And Emily in Mississippi, you still can do the same. If there's anyone else on there, I haven't seen them. All right. And then David will help you. The next thing, besides making the person the least likely to succeed, this is a I don't call it a genre. A sub example of that is that's why people are drawn to fish out of water stories, because I would make the argument that that's not as strong of a way to make the person the least likely to succeed, because all they have to do is acclimate to their new environment, right? But if they have some internal weakness or some internal flaw that keeps them from succeeding, that's stronger. But if they have both, then you have more to do in Act 2, because they can get acclimated to the environment, and then they can overcome their personal issues. And then the last thing to make it more compelling before you go to the next section, we'll stop and take questions in between the two sections too. And but is you can increase the stakes in a way where it's not just that they're larger, but after they get, let's say there's 5 obstacles they have to get through. After they get through the first one, yes, the second one is larger, but there's no going back. Like the first one, that bridge is burnt, right? And so there can't be a retreat. And then they get through the second one, that bridge is burnt. There's no going back. So not only do they have to go through tougher obstacles, but the plot drives them forward because they can't go backwards. There's and audiences, because they have their cultural inventory, they know that. And if someone were to retreat and go back to step 1, it just wouldn't feel right to the audience. They might not know why. Your mom and your mailman might not know why, but they would know something was off.
I actually have never heard it said that way, and that makes so much sense. And I think the way that you're saying it has to be like an internal and external reason why they're unfit for this. And I think when they finally get to that obstacle where it's no turning back, they're fully committed at that point, like externally, but also internally. At that point, it's like, we're doing this.
In addition to Bethany's question of can a poem be a story, are there any other questions? Chime in, type in, call David at 555. No, not really. Are you typing something, Sierra? Oh, okay. You can also turn your mics on and talk.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and Bethany, if you wanted to clarify your question or anything.
What a polite audience.
I guess I would interrupt for just a second and say, I know that some poems, obviously, it's not meant to be a story, but there are some really good examples of books that are written like in verse, right? Where it's telling a full story. So I guess just questions about, do you have to change the way that you think of story in order to make verse work for it? Or is it something that, that works that way? I don't know.
I was thinking, and I was going to bring this up earlier and forgot, but when Jon Meyers was talking about cultural inventory, that kind of also depends on where you're from and the kind of stories they're telling, because I know you and David really like Japanese stories, right? And that's kind of a different structure as well. And so I think our expectations slightly change based on what we're looking at. So I feel like if someone is reading something in verse, they're automatically kind of anticipating something different and something that might go in a different direction than they expect. I could be wrong. Maybe they expect the same structure, but I feel like they might be more willing to see you play around with different ways of doing things, if that makes sense. But I think the things that we're talking about do show what becomes the most impactful story, like having obstacles and having the characters, whether that's the narrator or a character in your story or an object or whatever it is in a poem, seeing like somebody overcoming something or failing at something, I think makes the story more impactful.
And I am not a poet, but I'll add to that that the things that we're talking about, these elements, they certainly would, like Emily said, they might be structured differently, but if they're present, they will make the story more compelling, or they'll make the poem more compelling and stronger. The Odyssey, Homer the Odyssey, and the Iliad. There has to be a goal. There has to be obstacles, right? And so yeah. The next section, I don't know if we're ready to go there yet, but is why do we tell stories? And every one of these points, I think, and then Bethany can chime in and say if they don't, would apply to a story that's in the form of a poem, I think, even though it's not what we were envisioning when we wrote the outline. What do you write, Sierra?
So I was a news reporter, and I basically wanted to start getting into more creative types of writing, like short stories, and in general, instead of doing hard news writing, I would like to be able to do, like magazine writing, which I think is a bit more creative.
That's awesome. And it's interesting as
basically.
Gotcha. I imagine, because one of my best friends writes news stuff too, and she talked about like a big part of what you're learning is capturing the audience's attention and keeping it throughout. And so you know how to work your sentences in a way that moves them forward. And I think that's a valuable skill.
Thanks.
So I think that's awesome that you're seeking more creative work.
Thank you.
And Lori Twichell is watching on Facebook, eating popcorn. Apparently, it says, "Dude, not to share your popcorn with us, Lori." But if you want to type in the comments what you write, go right ahead. And but I will continue on. So I have a couple points of why we tell stories, but the number one is because stories connect us, and that's why we crave stories. That's why, in a recent episode on our podcast, Emily and I played the same game 2 weeks in a row, and I didn't even know this until she pointed it out, but I turned these slides into a game, into a story, and it wasn't meant to be a story, but my brain just turned it into a story. And that episode hasn't aired yet, but and but our brains will even make stories out of things that aren't stories. We had a afterthought 100 years ago when the podcast was new, from Rachel, the neuroscientist, where I took umbrage with her position. She argued that stories were an artifice, and there wasn't such a. She almost. I'm oversimplifying this, but she was almost arguing there's no such thing as story. But you see a person walking a dog on a leash, and the dog has a sweater on. There's a story about how that dog got the sweater, right? And now it might not be the accurate story, but your brain did come up with a story about how that dog got that sweater. Stories connect us. The perfect example, the most timely 2024 example is, and we crave to share those stories with others. So if you have a friend that's, if you're in a long distance relationship or a long distance friendship, or you and your husband or you and your spouse work at different schedules and you're both watching the same show, they don't get to watch 2 episodes ahead of you. When they're streaming it, you all have to watch them at the same time or stay connected, even if you have a friend, whatever, in Cincinnati or whatever, and you're watching the same show, and you don't go on to the next episode until they caught up with episode 3, right? Because you're watching it together, even though you're not watching it together. So it's not the close physical proximity. It's it's the story that's connecting those people.
That's really good. I want to note that, so when we asked what story is, Sierra and Lori had similar answers about it being a method of communication for entertainment, bring people together. And it's kind of like that's similar to the answer you're giving about why we tell stories. And I love too, so I'm reading Lori's recent response. She says she's a screenwriter. She says, my genre is usually something in the drama, romance, or sitcom realm, but I like to say that my genre is hope, whatever leaves you feeling a little better after you have watched. And I think that's a huge part of this. It connects us, and then it can also help us grow. I think telling stories and reading them or watching them is just so healing. It's inspiring to see people overcome challenges. Even I think in tragedies, there's some, what's the word? I think it starts with a C. What is it? Catharsis to it. And so there's just that, it's like a big hug.
Point number 2, stories are good for your mental health.
Yes.
It's like we've worked together for a while. So I'm working on an article for September. So working is a very loose term because when I see an article that applies to it, I'm putting it in a folder because it's not time to write the article yet. Emily's going to have a lot to say on this, but the number one thing I'm going to point out is there's actually academic scholarly studies that oxytocin is released in your brain while you're watching stories with familiarity. I was hoping Dr. Nick actually registered for this thing. I was hoping Dr. Nick would show up, and because I was going to ask him what the connection. So I'll just ask everybody else, including David. Why does a story with which you're familiar, or a pattern of a story with which you're familiar, why does that help you connect better than a story for the first time, the story that you've seen for the first time? What is familiar? There's something about familiarity that connects us even more. Anybody?
I have thoughts on it, but I'm going to wait and see what other people have to say.
Because once Emily talks, it's the definitive answer. No. That's the truth. Oh, we have a Bob. Hi, Bob.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Is it our Bob in Nashville?
I don't know. It's Bob, but
it is because he's got the picture of Bob. Well, the picture that Bob uses. It's not a picture of Bob.
I'm saying like a South Park guy.
Yeah,
Bob.
that's what he usually uses, isn't it?
Oh, I don't.
Show yourself, Bob.
There's a Bob watching who identifies as a South Park character.
Right. Emily says, I agree that the sharing of emotion within a story helps people understand their life. And I think that's a good point in that it kind of helps you, it helps you. I think sometimes watching or reading a story that really relates to you helps you make sense of your experiences. Like it puts structure and words and visuals to an experience that you had, that it's like, okay, I went through this and I can actually relate to this protagonist and I can see how they grew. And maybe I didn't give myself enough credit in thinking that I grew during that experience, but like I did. And you can relate to that character and go, yeah, I've been there, and wow, look, I made it. I made it just like they did. Does that make sense?
It can either model a proper decision-making strategy, or it can validate one you've already made, and then you feel better about the decision that you made.
Bob also says it takes less mental work, which is so true, that if I'm choosing to watch something that's familiar like that, there's like okay, I can just relax, and I trust the storyteller. I trust that they're going to have a happy ending, that most likely if it's romance, you know, like they're going to end up together and everything's going to be happy, and you don't have to sit there like at the edge of your seat worrying about what's going to happen.
And for those of you curious, that chime was Bob. It was the Bob Saenz, celebrity screenwriter. Hi, Bob. This is not a drinking game, so we don't drink here, so no one do the Hi, Bob drinking game. Yeah, that's a great point.
And Bethany has a good comment in the chat.
Okay.
Emily has a better voice to read it, though.
Bethany says, I think stories that feel familiar are comforting and connecting, and stories that flip it around and catch us off guard can serve a different purpose. But when story doesn't feel authentic or real, it's like an uncanny valley effect of story.
And the Ocean Springs Emily says, it's reassuring you are not alone.
Yeah, both great. Both great.
Hey, Emily, why don't you and I get out of here and let these people take over?
I know, right?
This is awesome. So, with that in mind, Emily and I have not talked about this on the podcast, but we are both big fans of Godzilla -1. It is a very emotional, and Emily's good at describing things that, like if I hold up a book on the podcast and people are listening in their car, I'm describing the past things of it. And but it's a very emotional story, and these things that we're talking about, how stories connect us. It's a monster movie, but it's not.
If y'all haven't seen Godzilla -1, it's a screenwriting masterpiece.
Yeah, and even I was going to say that even just reading it, it's very moving. Just reading it on paper, it has the right amount of white space around. Like it's
interesting.
I mean, it's beautiful, and so the fact that there's the touchstones in it are touchstones of familiarity, because we all can relate to the little child. To I love, and other people will love different things about it, but I love the community of let's go. We're all gonna. They have this big community hall where the whole town meets, and they're like, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna put together this tag along team of ragtag people, and we're gonna defeat this thing, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
Say more about that. Bethany's shaking.
Well, it's interesting because that may be an example of like what Bethany said, of a story that catches us off guard, but the emotions are relatable. We've never experienced a massive nuclear monster trampling down our cities, but we have experienced terror or fear of the future, or regret is a huge theme of the story, grief. And so even if the actual premise is something just wild like that, we can connect to the characters. And I think that watching those characters overcome those emotions and trials is cathartic and is inspiring.
Frequent YouTube questioner Dallin has joined us.
Really?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. I mean, welcome.
Both welcome and wonderful. So those points that we brought out to pull it back to Bethany's question, a story poem hits every one of those touchstones that we talked about, and so you get a big enthusiastic yes on that, and that was a good point to bring, a good way to point it out. Do these things matter when you're telling a nonfiction story?
I think so, and if because we won't be able to get into all of this, so I recommend the episode that we did with Dr. Cindy Childress, because she talks about, I don't remember the number episode, but if you look for our episode with Dr. Cindy, she talks about structuring nonfiction in a way where your reader is the protagonist and your reader is going through that that journey of growth. And so it can be really powerful that way. Also, memoir, you're automatically putting, like, you are the protagonist in memoir. And so I think writing memoir is really healing because you can see yourself as a protagonist and see the obstacles that you went through and what you overcame. And I think that's really healing as well. And especially I find it very healing for the reader.
And before we get to the last section, what I wanted to add to that was, again, taking back to the first point, when the story is when you're the person most likely to succeed, it's a more compelling story. If you tell me the story for the 10,000th time of how you won the high school football championship, yeah, okay, and we were winning the entire time, and we won by 30-0 instead of 10-0 or 20-0. That's not a compelling story. But when there's a struggle and there's a rain delay and you get to go home and see your dying mother in the hospital and before you go back to finish the game, now it's a compelling story.
Yeah, that actually goes to a point that I want to make just before we move on, because this is so true for every type of story that we've talked about, is the importance of that character growth and their experience with failure. So I think even if you're writing memoir, you have to be vulnerable and share the struggle. Because like Jon Meyers said, if you just share like, and this is how I won this game, and this is how I won this game, like, dig deeper. Why are you writing a story? Why do you think people need to know it? And it's probably because you went through something that was hard that you overcame. And so focus on really being vulnerable and sharing that. I could go into this a lot, but when we talk about story structure and like, not story structure, but that is like planning out your story and what needs to happen, consider character failure as a really important element that you need to include. That if you're going to include those obstacles, you need to also let them fail sometimes, because that makes the victory even stronger.
I agree.
And more relatable.
I agree. So that leads us to your third section, which is...
Yes. What about story formulas?
Oh, formulas.
Do we want to start this with like an open question? Like, do you use formulas? What formulas do you use? Or do we just want to jump in?
So Bob says he has a massive nuclear monster on his sofa and he's sleeping. Bob is going to unleash the monster when you start talking about formulas.
Yeah, I realized, I was like, oh, Bob is here.
I am going to say, here's what I'll say, and then we'll let everyone chime in. I am going to say that there are tools, not rules, to steal from William Martell. And just because, since Bob's in the audience, there are certain parameters that a Hallmark story has to have, and he will tell you that you write around the edge of those parameters and you can make it more compelling. And it's not like a formula where they're all the same.
Yeah.
Look how well you taught me, Bob. And that's really all I'm going to have to say about it. So continue, Emily.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we just said all of the things that we think should happen to make a story the most compelling. And those are the necessary things, right? And then there are these other things that are going to be, if you just look up like story formula online, there's going to be so many different kinds. That's almost like putting your story into little slots. And I think, so personally for me, starting off that way was helpful for me to like kind of think about, like, looking at the formula, looking at films and books that I've seen and read and going, oh yeah, they do kind of have this structure. And it kind of helped me think through that. But then I think that, like Jon Meyers would say, working on the edges and not feeling like it has to be this slot, this slot, this slot, this slot.
And if you're writing for television, there are certain places where it breaks. There are certain beats that it breaks on. What you do in and amongst those beats, you're totally free to do whatever you want, but those have to happen. So I compare it to like when you're building a house, and so it's the sticks, the structure of the house. You can do the wallpaper and the carpet and all that. Yep. You can do whatever you want, but the story still has to have the households, the structure of the house.
Yeah, I've also heard Mary Robinette Kowal on Writing Excuses said it's like a vessel, like a glass vessel that you could fill it with Jell-O, you could fill it with chicken soup, you can fill it with sweet tea, but it's still in the same thing. And especially, I think it's good to think about why we had this, because you just made a good point that with television, and I think it was Lori who said she wrote some sitcoms and things like that, that those, even just in the television structure, have certain things. But then when you translate them to Netflix, it's like, why did they pause there? There's no commercial break anymore. And so you have to think about what was the origin of that structure, and is that still relevant with the medium that I'm using?
Some of the stuff on streamers could be sold overseas where there are commercials still. And so
that makes sense why some of them still kind of have those beats where,
yeah, that's
oh no, the person we thought was the murderer is actually the dead body on the floor. Like,
or even in a comedy, that's when the kid gets locked in the locker, right?
Yeah,
right
yeah.
So, yeah, good point.
I think when you are thinking about your story, there's some improv that you can do when we're talking about working around the edges, where, and not necessarily, it can be improv during the writing, but it could also just be quote unquote improv during the outlining process, where you think through what's the worst that could happen, what's the most interesting thing that could happen, and if my character tries this, are they going to succeed? And if they succeed, then how can that somehow still make things worse? And if they don't succeed, how does that make things worse? So you're constantly trying to make things worse for the characters over and over and over again, sometimes through their victories, sometimes through their failures, but it's getting worse until that final victory.
Lori added, besides agreeing with me, which I appreciate. Thank you, Lori. I'll point that out about 4 more times before we end this. She calls it like shaking up the snow globe, right?
Oh, that's good.
That's a beautiful way to put that. Dallin, you haven't had anything to say yet. There's a comment from Bethany if David or Emily want to read it. But Dallin, tell us something. Jump in here and tell us something. I will, while before Emily and David read what Bethany said, Sierra just put something in. TV is interesting because it seems that sometimes each episode follows a traditional structure, but sometimes the overall season follows a structure. Some episodes in between sort of break out and don't have a traditional plot, like certain bottle episodes. Yeah, bottle episodes, true. Or there's 3 episodes in a row where it's the sister we've never seen before. It's the brother from out of town. That's because in a writer's room, and Lori can talk on this more than I can, but if there's 12 people in a writer's room and they go off in groups of 3 or 4, those people will be like, hey, let's do 3. Let's do 3 where an out-of-town relative comes or something. And but they're like-minded people that go off together. So that's how those things happen. And Lori,
there's a great example of that if anybody's watched the show Community, where they actually have a bottle episode. And they call it like a bottle episode, and it's like they're stuck in a room and they have to solve this problem. And then they also had one where they had a really low budget, and so they were thinking they may not be able to do an episode, and the director was like, no, we can do an episode. I'm going to do it with mostly images. And so they basically filmed a Ken Burns style documentary episode. And it was just like a brilliant way to get around the budget issues and still like have their story continue in some way.
Yep, 100%. Someone go back up and read Bethany's previous comment.
Oh, I don't use story formulas, but I do know that in the poetry world, it can be a really fun and unique challenge to adhere to a specific formula, like a Sestina or Villanelle, but it is often harder. That's an interesting example because those are like so much more strict than most formula, like story formulas are, right? Like that is, you can't work around the edges. It's especially with a Villanelle. It's so specific.
I wasn't going to bring this up earlier, but since Bethany brought it up. So hi Christina Irene. Christina Irene has a novel. She's working on a novel that she just finished first draft. But I've read this earlier novel that was written in the form of a Sestina.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. And it's like this thick. like, wow, what is this brain you have? Right? I mean, it's amazing.
That is another example of, there are books that I've read of that are more literary, where they're playing around with different techniques, where you go into it and you go, this is just going to be different. I don't know what to expect. It's not like reading a romance and going, I know exactly what they're going to hit, these certain elements. It's like, I have no idea. But when the author is giving you that expectation, I think you're more open and willing to that, right? You're more willing to just go, okay, I'm along for the ride and I'm willing to be surprised.
So Lori just said at the very last 5 minutes, I'm working on the tech side of joining you. We will see how this turns out. It may end up in a sitcom script, obviously.
It sounds like it, but it's like maybe she's using her mic and cam somewhere else, like in another tab.
Oh, you're so fancy, Lori, with all your tabs open. Your 140 tabs open. Why don't you ring the bell while Lori's trying to get in there, and then we'll take some questions, and then we'll hop on out of here.
First of all, if you're not already subscribed, you can go to writebettertogether.com, and there's a little form there that you can subscribe through. But we are having another webinar, and it is going to be the third week of January. The third Thursday of January. What date is that? I forgot to write it down.
Tell them about it and I'll pull up the calendar.
Sure. So we're going to be talking about perfectionism, which we actually touch on a little bit in an episode that's going to come out in December, but we're going to go even deeper into what can you do to, we haven't decided what it's going to be called, but
pulverizing perfectionism.
Yeah, we want it to like be
it has to start with a P.
It has to start with a P. So we've been like playing around with different P words for it. But just tools. I think we're probably going to have some writing exercises in that one, so it'll be really fun.
That would be January 16th.
So if you want to be informed about that, definitely subscribe to our newsletter so you'll know about that.
I want to ring David Corbly's bell. OpenDoorCreations.com for all your website needs and fixing needs, building needs. I spent an hour with him yesterday and he showed me like 4,100 million things that could be done, and my brain exploded and it started dripping out of my ears. But he knows everything, like literally everything, and now he's shaking his head no. But so thank you, David. And because we couldn't have done
I like that.
Huh?
Bob says playing around with perfectionism.
Oh
yes, I think we should be called procrastinating perfectionism.
Bob, you have to you're used to writing the budget. You got to cut that middle word out.
Look what I learned how to do.
What?
Yeah, you moved us.
Oh,
can you not see it?
Thing up there? Oh yeah, I see it. Wow.
So now when I'm reading,
now you have to come back in January.
It'll be even better now.
Yep, I'm cutting that middle word, Bob. It can only be all P's. It can have a third word, but it can be a P word in the middle. All right, questions
or comments
or tips. Oh yeah, Lori, that's the Bob. What a common name where everyone knows when we say Bob who it is. Like that's a testament to you, Bob. It's not like, oh, whatever, Beelzebub.
I mean, when it's Write Better Together, it's Bob Saenz.
There you go.
Just so you all know, he gets squashed in the Jurassic Park movie, the second one, and I finally found it and I watched it and it was very enjoyable. So I'm glad to know that.
Of all the things Bob has done,
it made me really happy.
When you got stepped on, Bob.
It took us forever to find it, but we found it.
Oh, Bethany thought it was enough. Oh, we haven't mentioned birds. Oh my gosh, Bethany, how could we let you down? Here we go. There's Woodstock right there. Now there's a bird.
Man, that is really surprising.
We also haven't mentioned 1 week baby. If y'all don't know what these inside jokes are, that means you're not watching the podcast enough. That's all I can say.
I will say we're about to publish an episode on Tuesday that mentions a lot of birds. It's so many birds.
Bob said playing around with perfectionism. He just put the P in front of it. Like that. We should keep that. All right. Questions, people. I want to be. Let's play Stump. Like Emily tries to stump Jon Meyers.
I thought about doing a surprise Hey Jon Meyers in here.
Okay.
But I thought about it too late and I didn't have time to prepare for it.
It doesn't take much preparation for that one. David, do you want to give us a tip? A tech tip. David's tech tip corner.
Oh, well, I was going to give a life tip.
Okay. That's
to
even better.
Emily and anyone else.
Oh.
Not Bob.
Look, everybody. It's not Bob.
Yeah.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. You can actually hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Time's up. We
That's
gotta go.
Right. That's it. No, I've bounced around all my phone, my iPad, all the things, and I figured out what happened is that there was a clear window at the bottom that kept saying join live call, and it blocked me from saying, hi everyone.
Well, next time you'll know what to do.
I know.
That's a great story because it actually plays into what my parting words are going to be before we get to the actual parting words, Emily. But I want to hear David's life tip.
Oh, well, since I'm one of the old guys here, I had 5 kids.
Oh my
gosh. Biggest life regret is not doing more family vacations. So those of you with young families, do more things together. We only had one really out-of-state family vacation. So if I could do it over again.
That's a good tip. And that's good to find out that before you have the baby. Bob wants a plug. So here's Bob's plug.
That's not how it works.
The vampire book's right over there, but I'm not getting up out of my chair to go get it, but I can see it.
And he talks about story logic in there. And so if you're interested in that, even if you're not a screenwriter.
True. That is true. My final point I would like to make is, and we did this intentionally, we could have done a regular webinar where it was just our faces and then you all were typing in the chat, which lo and behold, that's what it evolved into. And but you were welcome to come on and talk. But that put an extra layer of whatever. I don't want to say difficulty because it wasn't that difficult, but we didn't know that, a month ago or a week ago. And, but we did that because our Right Better Together ethos is to, build the plane while you're flying it. God brought David in to help, right? And it all just worked out. And we did the same thing with our book. We did the same thing with the podcast. We didn't even exist in February. And then by March, we had the podcast up. And we want to encourage everyone to do that, especially David, whose podcast is going to be up by April 15th. But anybody else who's out there, Lori is starting a podcast.
I am. I think you just made the announcement for me. It's called Nothing Trivial. And it will be premiering soon, I hope.
Awesome.
Let's pressure her to put a date on that.
My hope is mid-January.
Let us know on our self-promo Mondays we do on Facebook. And then we do Wednesday mini wins, right?
We do Winning Wednesday.
Winning Wednesday.
Self-promo Monday.
Self-promo Monday. So either one of those you can share that on.
Perfect.
Yeah, and Lori, if you do the middle of January, then that you can come on and tell us about it on what pulverizing perfectionism webinar, whatever that's going to be called, playing around with perfectionism, because that's the third Thursday.
So can I close this with a call to action? Because I just thought of one, and we didn't plan this, but
yep.
Okay, I want you all to write a 100-word story that has a protagonist, a goal, and an obstacle. And ideally, there will be trial and errors where the character tries something and fails and tries something and fails and then succeeds. And then also ideally, you can reveal the genre early in that first sentence. So genre in the first sentence, protagonist, goal, and then have obstacles, and then an end, a conclusion of the character succeeding or failing that goal.
I think someone had this planned because this seems very specific.
Well, I've seen other people do similar challenges, and so I'm just giving you all the challenge.
And Bethany, you don't know this, but we read this on an upcoming episode. I think the December 10th episode. All right, that's a good call to action.
Awesome.
Do I have to do it too?
Sure, if you want to.
No, you're supposed to say you get to do it, Jon Meyers. Does it have to be 100 words? Can it be 101, or it has to be 100?
I think it can be a little over 100, but the idea is for it to be short.
Can it use long words, or does it have to be all short words? Their letter count.
That's my family did a challenge where we wrote 2-sentence stories, but my sentences were really long.
Is there a number of instances of punctuation we're allowed to use?
Yeah. No, I didn't use any semicolons. I think I may have used a dash, maybe.
Thank you, everybody. This was
Thank
fun.
you so much. We couldn't have done it without you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
And we're back. I'm still Jon Meyers. That was so good. We heard from Bethany, David, Dallin, Sierra,
and Emily,
and Lori Twichell, whose if this is January 7th, her podcast will be starting any minute now, sometime this month. I was there. You were there.
Same.
Was Winnie there?
No.
And there were people there who never chimed in. We learned that on a subsequent endeavor, that there are people that, and it's okay to do that. There are people that just lurk in the background and watch or watch it later. And and I've been that person or sometimes someone will chime in at the very end and like, oh, that was great. And we're like, yeah, I didn't even know you were here the whole time.
Anything else you wanted to add to that?
Nope. I'm waiting for those beautiful words.
Hey, Jon Meyers.
Oh my goodness. There they are. Is this about haircuts today?
No. So
I was going to have a bunch of crackers here and like, I'm be like, it's been 3 months since that cracker machine episode and I'm still not buying it. But I forgot my crackers.
Cracker machine episode?
The last Hey Jon Meyers that we recorded was a cracker pulverizing machine.
Oh. That's right. Biscuits. But I think they were crackers.
Yeah.
It's
bothered me all through Thanksgiving, through Christmas, through the New Year. I can't get the cracker pulverizing machine out of my brain.
No, it's not about crackers.
Thank goodness.
Last year, 2024, was a leap year.
Oh, that really messes with the time change, doesn't it? We got an extra hour and then another hour and another day. Did we get an extra day or a minus a day? I don't know how leap year works.
So last year was a leap year. We added a day in February.
Oh my goodness.
So, but how long have we had leap years, Jon Meyers?
Too long. That's my honest gut react. Oh, I said gut. Yuck. First the colon, now the gut. We're the number one podcast for gastroenterologists who are also writers. I don't know because I don't like the leap year. I don't like change. I don't like the time change. I don't like the date change. I don't like anything.
I have very strong opinions about the time change. I despise fall backward. I despise it because the sun now sets at 4:30.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's dumb.
It's dumb.
I'm sorry, but I'm all for changing this so that we have permanent daylight savings time.
There's your political hot take.
That is my political hot take.
We didn't do any politics in 2024. We're starting 2025 out. This is all politics, this show from now on.
You know why? Okay, this is not what I was going to talk about, but
okay.
And I don't have my resource right now, but I think I learned this on QI. is that there was just this guy who would get up really early in the morning and ride his horse around fields, and he was like, all those people are sleeping during this wonderful time of morning. We should change that. And so we changed the time.
That's true. That is true.
And it's
I know that story.
You ruined our lives.
And when we were little children, Emily and I are the same age. When we were little children, we were told it was so when we waited for the school bus at 5 a.m. that it wouldn't be dark. That's what we were told.
Yes. And that is the safety aspect of it that I understand, but also depending on, maybe we need to get rid of it in some states and not others.
Maybe the school bus driver knows to drive carefully in the dark. How about that?
School later.
Or start school later. But that was, even as a little 9-year-old Jon Meyers, I'm like, what? We got to change the time because this guy can't drive a bus? That makes no sense.
I think it's because of the kids being out in the dark.
Well, learn how to drive the bus and you won't crash into them. But why do you need daylight?
The kids will still be out in the dark, though.
Did you not play in the dark when you were? What's the difference if you're playing outside in the dark or you are? It was a different time back then as well. Like we went out and parents never even knew where we were. But
yeah, exactly.
What's the difference if you're playing in the dark or standing stationary at the bus stop waiting in the dark? None.
I don't know.
We have strong opinions this year.
But anyway, this whole topic started because I asked when leap years started.
Oh yeah. We've talked about the topic so long. It's another leap year already.
I know. So essentially, hold on, I gotta find it. I want to be accurate. Do you know who like and is known for like saying this is our calendar now? And
Julius Caesar.
Yes, correct. So Julius Caesar, they learned about the existing Alexandrian calendar. So the Alexandrian calendar was already being used, and it was the 4-year leap year cycle that was considered to be more precise than the current Roman calendar. And so Caesar basically brought on their astronomer and they created this calendar. So we've been using it for that long because that was that was in 46 BC.
Wow, that's a long time. That's when people walked on top of the roofs to get from their neighbor's house.
No, that was way before that. There have been some changes since then. So, for instance, in 1582, Pope Gregory VIII, they created a more precise calendar. So this was from the astronomer Aloysius Lilius.
You nailed it. Aloysius, and I don't know the last name.
I don't know. They decreed that the day following October 4th would be, or no, I'm sorry. They decided that the years ending in 00 would be common years rather than leap years, except those divisible by 400, and that the new year will start on January 1st. So I don't...
Stop it, calendar people.
I don't even know what I'm saying.
It's math. Stop with all the math, calendar people.
Anyway, the change was made in 1752 in Great Britain. Wow. They basically moved September 2nd to be followed by September 14th. Oh. And New Year's Day was changed from March 25th to January 1st. I have no idea. Like, I don't even know how that works. You just skip.
Like my head didn't hurt enough after my haircut. Now it's hurting on the inside with all of these numbers.
Like they just were like, we're going to skip 12 days. And then why was New Year's Day March 25th?
If only we had an expert that knew about this stuff we could invite on this show.
I don't even understand this. Why am I using this as Hey Jon Meyers if I don't even understand it? I understood that I just went too far. I was just going to talk about the leap year. I went too far. And now I don't understand what I just said.
So
did you learn anything?
Yeah, so I knew my takeaway is that's where the 12 days of Christmas came from. That's why that song is so long. It goes 12 turtle dove, what all those things, right? And that's what it takes the exact amount of that song to fill the gap of those missing days between the two calendars. There you go. That's some
oh my goodness.
real
that's more
reality.
I think the 12 days of Christmas is between Christmas and Epiphany.
You're right. It is. You and your facts.
Hey, Jon Meyers. So I gave you 2 separate facts that were better than my original fact.
No, but that was perfect because it made my head hurt just like the haircut. So it brought the whole episode full circle.
Awesome.
So I have a question. There are people that don't follow the current calendar. They follow a 14-month calendar right now in 2025. Do you know anything about these people?
I was trying to research that and I couldn't find an answer, but I didn't research for very long.
Okay, and then does that one have the leap year in it? The 14-month one, I wondered. And then the last thing I want to say before we put this before we turn the page on the calendar, enter 20. We're entering that we've already entered 2025. If you didn't have the leap year, who would know? Like the seasons would get out of whack 300 years later.
Yeah, but we need.
I mean, I get the purpose for the leap year, but if you didn't do it, it would just be out of whack eventually, but not right away.
Yeah, but we're following the sun, and so I feel like it would be. I mean, because we have certain this is when the moon changes to this. This is when we have the equinox and stuff like that, like all of that.
Yeah. So what? It would have the equinox that happen on June 22nd and June 23rd, and eventually be happening in September. And who cares?
I think
farmers. Farmers probably care.
This way. I looked up your question. The only country the only calendar that is different is the Ethiopian calendar, which has 13 months.
There are people in the United States that use a 14-month calendar. There are people in the United States that follow a 14-month calendar, and I don't know anything about them. A society, an organization.
Interesting. Well, if you want to learn more from people who don't know what they're talking about,
this is the place to show up.
You can, and if you want to respond and explain to me what I just read, and then
I don't.
You can contact us at writebettertogethernow@gmail.com. You can subscribe to this podcast so you always know when there's a new episode. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter if you go to writebettertogether.com. And at the homepage, there's a subscription box. And then you can know when we have new webinars, such as the one that's coming up.
There you go.
Well, does that mean it's time for the final act? So I'm really curious about what this game is because Jon Meyers has a bunch of lamps behind him. But so while he was getting it set up, I was rereading what I had read earlier about the calendar, and it finally makes sense to me. So I didn't know this, and so this is partly why it was confusing, that New Year's used to be March 25th. That's when they celebrated.
So you can see my surprise response to that.
Up until 1750. So weird.
So there were people here, but we weren't a country yet. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So we were a British colony.
Wild. Yeah.
So yeah, but still not like that long ago though that they were celebrating New Year's on March 25th. And then the other thing I read that confused me that I just had to like take a step back is that basically when I talked about them skipping time, so they basically went from October 4th to October 15th. That was just to rectify the calendar. Hopefully we never have to do that. Imagine if they were just like, all right, we're going to fix our calendar now. So tomorrow is January 25th.
I'm not participating in that if they do that.
It would be so wild, but that's what they did.
If they do that, they're on their own. I'm not doing it.
It's a good thing they fixed that beforehand because now people are so set on their schedules. I mean, imagine businesses having to skip 10 days. It would ruin everything. So,
yep.
All right, I'm ready now.
Well, you also previewed a future Hey Jon Meyers that I don't know the answer to when you said we were a British colony. Did George Washington have a British accent? I don't know.
That's a complicated question.
I saw the headline, but I did not read the article. So someday we'll learn that.
You will either get that later, or I will time travel and do it in an earlier episode.
Okay. I like it. Wait, if you time travel, what does it do to the calendar?
I don't know.
Which calendar are you going to land back on? All right. Time for... Emily.
Yes.
Some title involving light of the world to celebrate the new year. So you will be playing for The Miracle of the Lemon, this thick tome of 24 pages of lemon facts. They're fascinating. I might even put some of those facts in the show notes or in the timestamp underneath.
Wonderful.
Underneath the thing. But it's from the 1900s. It's from a previous century. 1960, before any of us were born. And it tells us all about lemons. There you go.
Love it.
You want to win that book. And it's small enough I can actually mail it to you. All right. The idea of the game is you're supposed to be able to tell by the expression on my face, but my face isn't in the screen. I will put my hand over each one of these lamps like this, or I'll do this. I'll point at each lamp.
All right, so there are 3 lamps.
There are 3 lamps.
One, they're all black, I think, but one has a red shade. The middle one looks like a desk lamp, like a Pixar lamp.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is just a taller lamp with a black shade. So,
yes, sure. So this is Taylor Tomlinson. I'm stealing this game from her, but I'm not. She played guess which one of these lamps actually light up. Oh. Emily, you will be playing the opposite. One of these lamps does not light up. The other 2 do. You will guess which lamp doesn't light up based solely by the expression on my face while you talk about them. So I got to get my face back into the
Is that how she did it? By the expression on her face?
So there were 3 celebrities standing behind each lamp, and she's like, will this one light up? And they would go, I don't know. Would it? They didn't talk. They just made expressions. So
okay.
I got to get my face back down here. They do need to be shorter or taller. Okay. This is going to have to do.
He's so close to the camera. If you're listening, you're missing out on
the other show. They were behind the lamps, right? It made more sense, but I can't get behind the wall. All right. I'll just keep doing this. The first lamp. Wait, hold on. Oh my God. All right. Emily, do you think this lamp will light up or not light up?
Will it, Jon Meyers? That looks like the same face you did in the Bob game that told us nothing.
Emily.
I'm going to guess it's going to light up because if it didn't, then the game would be over.
Emily, lamp number 2.
I thought you were going to light it. And
no,
so
you have to tell me ahead of time which ones, and then we'll see if
that
you're
makes more sense.
Lamp number 2, the Pixar lamp. That was a very good description. Will it light up or not light up?
Will it, Jon Meyers? Say a little bit of a more mischievous looking face, like maybe will it not? No, it's not going to light up.
Is that your impression of me?
Yeah.
And the third one, it'll be hard to get my head in this picture, in this frame. Emily, will the third one?
Will it, Jon Meyers? Will it light up? Oh, that's the same face. Oh, that one won't light up.
All right. So to recap, you have said yes, yes, no.
No, I said yes, no, no, and I know that's wrong, but I changed my mind on the middle one after I saw your face on the last one.
Oh, okay. So the first lamp, you can now that you've seen all 3 facial expressions, varied by my acting ability. The first lamp, yes or no?
Are you trying to deceive me with your face, or are you trying to be honest with your face?
It was a very honest face. I have an honest face in all circumstances.
Okay, I think the first 2 yes and the last one no.
So you think yes, yes, no.
Correct.
I was pointing at them one at a time. Lamp number 1. Oh, you know where the switch is. Will it light up? You said what on this one?
Yes.
What if I don't even remember?
Oh, no. Wait, if you don't remember, then how are you helping me with your facial expressions?
I remember.
Okay.
You got it right.
Yay.
Congratulations. I didn't have a plan for what to do with the lamp after I remove it from the scene.
You can just leave them there.
Yeah, but then the next one that lights up won't be as impactful if there's already one lit up next to it. All right. This one, you said...
Yes.
You said yes to the Pixar lamp and no to the tallest lamp of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want me to flip the switch on first? This one?
The Pixar lamp.
You want me to switch this one on first?
Yes, please.
Too bad. I'm switching this one on.
Oh, no.
Oh!
You made a frowny face with that one.
Wah, wah, wah.
Your facial expressions are not clear.
I like how you blame your loss on me. And then last but not least, so you know that I'm not cheating. Here we go. Turn on this one. Now,
I think
why did I do this game? Not because I stole from Taylor Tomlinson. I knocked this lamp. This used to be one of the lamps that lit off behind the scenes at the podcast, right? And I knocked it off the little stool that it would sit on for all the previous episodes. So this lamp lit up every episode in 2024. Then after the last episode we filmed in 2024, it fell and broke, and so we had to start 2025 without it. So how appropriate for this game to be on the show. And then Taylor Tomlinson played that game. But look at this. What the heck kind of bulb is that? So look in there, people. Like, it's not even a regular bulb that broke. Like, who has a bulb that has 2 little prongs in a
It looks like
lamp?
it's missing one.
Well, this is the permanent thing. That's the permanent thing built in. That doesn't come out. And then the bulb that broke in a million pieces, it had 2 prongs in it, like a fluorescent tube. But it was just a regular looking bulb. I'm sure it cost $40.
I think next time...
Yes.
Much like the game Charades.
Yes.
The points should be on you on whether or not you can get me to guess something with your facial expression.
Well, make that your
because really, it's not my fault.
Wait, my face needs to get back on the show. Hold on. Here, watch. I'm doing my elevator. Oh.
Welcome back. All right. Well.
So what should it be now? What should I do next time?
Next time the points should be on you if your facial expression actually gives me answers. Just like charades. Like if somebody is poor at their charade and nobody guesses it, it's not their fault that they didn't guess it.
Oh.
It's the charades person's fault.
I wasn't implying that you were a poor guesser. I think intuitively you should just feel with your women's intuition which one was going to light.
Oh, man.
It's 2 against 1. Their Baby Brooks could have voted too. Baby Brooks. Kick twice if it's the middle lamp.
But not now, if you know what I mean.
We couldn't have done it without you.
Couldn't have done it without you.